Hello there, and welcome to my first campaign diary on camera. I decided that I would record on camera because it might just be a little easier for me, especially when trying to find content online, pictures, public domain things. I'll end up just repeating myself with images, and I would prefer something maybe a little fresher and a bit more engaging. So I thought, I've got a camera, I'll record it in person. So in this session of our campaign diary, the adventurers woke up in the tavern as usual, this time having the same repeated dream, but with one small change. A few of them could remember that from the murky, bubbling green water, they saw a face. Reptilian, pale, gaunt. Its amber eyes staring straight at them, and then slowly fading back away into the murk. And the adventurers woke up, and these memories started to fade a little bit. But as usual, Ivan wrote it down, scribbling it in his journal so that he could remember it to be able to speak to the rest of the party about over breakfast. They still don't actually know what this face or what this dreams are about, though they have been discussing that there's a lot of reptilian and serpentine sort of themes going on. And so maybe it's got something to do with the temple, maybe it's just got something to do with Restone in general. They decided last time that they would go to Castle Caldwell, and so that was their objective. They're going to go down to Castle Caldwell, clear it of goblins, and reap the rewards, hopefully finding lots of treasure that's in the castle itself. And so that's what they did. They headed down, journeying southwards towards the Triad Peaks region, but on their way they stopped off at Demdike's. There, Blank wanted to speak to her about being able to make poisons, and if she would be able to do that. However, they've had a previous conversation and she reminded him that she doesn't know how to make poisons herself. She is a potion maker, and if they are able to get ingredients and the sort, or just coinage in general, then she might be able to make or replicate potions if they find any. She did mention to Blank that if he goes and finds Bela, who is a dwarf lady, Bela Goldbeard, she has some shady businesses as part of the miners' exchange, and she might be able to provide them with poison, or at least teach him a little bit about it. He was also able to receive a estimated time on her arrival, which would be by the end of this week, as they have nearly spent a full month in Restone by this point. And then they set off again, heading south towards Castle Caldwell, and so their journey was fairly uneventful. From the meadows and pastures of Restone into the forests near Demdike's, and eventually into craggy hills where Castle Caldwell could be found. A tall and intimidating fortress with big iron doors at the front. The party had a little look around, realised that the windows that stood a few feet off the ground would be too narrow for them to climb through. But Blank decided that he wanted to scale the walls, and so he went to the eastern turret, scaled the wall up, and climbed down inside the castle. Yord was in his backpack, as Yord seems to have the tendency to climb in people's backpacks, root through their things. It's just one of Yord's many quirks, including an obsession with eggs. Meanwhile, Ivan, Frank, Bros, and Rory, who are the two retainers, and Junior the dog, were all waiting outside the front of the castle. They hadn't even tried to open the door. They decided that they first would just scale it. Hadn't even checked for traps or anything like that. Just had a little look around at the outside. And so whilst Blank went down the stairs of the turret and then into the main hallway itself, seeing that it was fairly well lit, at the same time as this, Ivan decided he would give the door a little push and realised that it was unlocked. And so he had Bros push forward, push the door ajar so he'd be able to see in. So while this was going on, Blank made his way down the hallway and decided to open the door to one of the rooms and discovered a trader there holding a short sword. Both of them were shocked to see each other, and it was a bit of a hostile negotiation as it kicked off, as both drew their weapons and pointed them at each other, in trying to intimidate each other, but also a little shocked. So they got off on the wrong foot. And with that, one of the traders, a little scared, decided to bang on the wall, and moments later, someone else came out of a room further down the corridor, the next room along, another trader, seemingly a brother of some sort, similar in appearance but a little beardy, and he had an axe. And so they all started arguing amongst each other, and realizing that he could be outnumbered here, Blank called for his dog, Junior, that rushed inside, and then Ivan and Frank swiftly followed, as well as the retainers. The traders then realized that they were definitely outnumbered. A third one came out of the third door on the hallway, and they basically began negotiating, saying, okay, let's calm this down, let's not have, no need to shed any blood. And the traders explained that they were along the road, they saw the castle, and they thought that they would rest up here for the night, take shelter. And so they would be gone within the next day or so, that they are heading to the nearest city. They also mentioned that they met a priestess named Elfrid on the roads, and she is somewhere else in the castle. She went looking for any kind of temple or something like that within the castle to pray. They also managed to negotiate and get the axe from one of the brothers, as they found out this axe was magical. And they basically said, listen, this axe is better on us. We've got larger numbers. We really know how to fight. And you guys should just lock yourselves up in this room. There's goblins in here. We'll use this axe, then we can give it back once we've cleared the dungeon and you guys are properly safe. They also said that they'll go and find Elfrid and return her to the group. And so after that, they went off and journeyed throughout the dungeon. They discovered in another room a group of 4 goblins with small piles of coins. They were all arguing amongst each other. Ivan used his persuasiveness of holding out small bags of gold, showing it to the goblins, and managed to lure one goblin out. And then the next goblin, and then a third goblin. While one of the goblins that stayed within the room wasn't having any of it, he wasn't believing it, and he now found that he could sweep up some of the leftover treasure that these goblins had seemingly just dumped for bags of gold. And they used this as an ambush on the goblins, these gullible goblins, with Blank being able to finally use his assassination techniques and instantly killed one of the goblins. And then the party, with a swift round of attacks, was able to decimate this small goblin group. The goblin that was inside the room barred the door and tried to sort of keep himself locked inside. But even then, it was no use, as the party were able to break it down and killed him. One of the goblins was even decapitated in the fight. It was that brutal. And so now the party had way more coins than they thought that they would even see. They had too many coins to even carry. And so they started filling up various sacks and things like that, and all of their purses that they had and their backpacks. All of the retainers were filling them up, and they'd had to leave some copper coins still in that room. Blank took out a piece of paper from Ivan's bag and wrote "cleaning in process," and then using a dagger nailed it to the door so that no one would go inside. They went into another room, a kitchen, and they found more treasure in there, so they sort of pooled it all together and realized that by the end of this, they're going to be very rich after only searching part of this place. In another room, they came across a single chest that was left in there, and a little bit suspicious, they decided to check it for traps, and Blank was able to discover that this was trapped. And with some very, very good rolls from the group, they were able to pry open the chest ever so slightly and remove the poison trap, so that now they had a vial of poison that they would be able to use. They also realised that this chest would be able to carry a lot of their excess coinage that they had in the other room. So they then carried it back, sort of filling up that chest with all the copper coins that they had. But it wasn't just all treasure and no traps, as in another room with lots of rubbish around and 2 large sacks and a dead goblin with a bloated arm, they encountered a spitting cobra that spat at Blank, and its poison blinded him. And so Blank was terrified of this. They were able to come up with a quick temporary solution for moving and navigating Blank around, using his dog Junior as a guide dog. And they decided, right, we need to go and find this priestess, this cleric Elfrid, who is somewhere else within this dungeon. We know the direction she went, so they decided to loop back around and headed straight there. And sure enough, after checking and listening into some walls, they were able to uncover the small chapel room, an altar, and they explained the situation, that they were here to help, that they were ridding the castle of goblins, and that they would protect Elfrid. She through the kindness of her own heart, healed Blank and removed his blindness. And then they escorted her back to the traders where she was safe. So it was a very quick sort of solution, but panicked for the brief few moments that they had there. And in the final room for this session that they searched, they heard some buzzing. Blank was able to silently open it and saw some sturges and went unnoticed. They then closed it and came up with a plan. They would use the decapitated goblin head from earlier and throw it into the room as a distraction so that these sturges, these blood-sucking monsters, giant mosquitoes, almost bird-like, feathered, would zip down and attack this goblin head to drain it of what blood was left in it. And then they would get the drop on the creatures. And so that is essentially what happened. They were able to get the head, threw it in, it attracted the sturges, and then Blank threw his poison flask towards the sturges and missed. It was a bit of a shame. One of the sturges flew at the group and attacked Frank and started draining him of blood. The group then, with the retainers, started attacking. Yord ran into the room and was able to use one of his empty sacks to bag a sturge and spent a round of combat sort of like a small child with a helium balloon that's too large for them, sort of battering it around, but was able to keep it in one spot. And with some nicely placed shots from Blank and Rory, all the sturges were dealt with and the party was victorious. A little beaten up though, they decided that they needed to rest up and found their way back to the altar room where they closed the door and rested for a few moments. And that is where we finished the session. So it was a really fun session, properly doing like a proper dungeon. Everyone has gotten a lot more used to the dungeon mechanics now, I feel. They didn't have to worry about things like lighting because there's skylights for all of the rooms here. But yeah, it was good to see them all having fun with a dungeon and thinking up interesting and unique ideas. One of the things for the treasure chest, the poisoned treasure chest, that trap, was Yord brought up the idea of what if we saw it in half from the bottom and take out the base of the chest, and then we can see what's inside without lifting the lid up. So that was something, but with Blank had sort of already decided he was going to try and push it open with his high dexterity and was just able to get that off. But yeah, there was lots of interesting thoughts, especially, Yord bagging the sturge so that it wouldn't fly away or couldn't like dive down on them. He was sort of trapped in a little bit. There's a lot of teamwork there. And it gave time for their retainers to be able to shine. This is the first time that retainers had done a lot in combat, especially Rory. He's still just a normal human. He's just a commoner. So he has a +0 to his attack, and he has 2 HP. Luckily, he didn't find a scratch on him. The only characters, I believe, that got hurt in the combats that they had were Ivan got slashed by a goblin and quite hurt, and then Frank got suckered by a sturge. But they did get some healing potions from the town earlier on in previous sessions, and they managed to get some healing potions from the priestess. So they had some resources to use, and I think they've used up most of them so far. But yeah, it's really good to see. They have been thinking about how they're going to move all this treasure. That's their main conflict at the minute. And they're a little worried about how many goblins there actually are, because they've only encountered 4 so far. And if this place is meant to be almost infested, where could the rest be? They've basically done half of this level of the dungeon. Something that is kind of funny is that they haven't encountered any wandering monsters. I have the sheet over here for Castle Caldwell, and there's 7 different roles for wandering monsters that I never got a single encounter on, which is kind of crazy. It was insane. It's the randomness of it. Though I have seen a post about a different random or different wandering monster table where it's like a countdown type thing. So that's something maybe that I'll have to look into and use. Okay, so that's it for this session. Thank you very much for watching. As always, take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.